Let's see what happens. Success. Hey, welcome to Mongrels Garage, where our main focus is on low dollar builds, whether it be for the daily driver, the flip, or the swap. But we will work on whatever we can get our hands on just to get that experience, whether it be shiny or grimy. Today, we are going to be looking at the swap side of things, specifically that black magic that is wiring. We're going to take you through the swap side of making a modern Hemi run on the factory components in your swap vehicle. So let's get into that, see what we come up with. So the first thing I'd like to discuss is the computer, or the BCM, or the engine controller, whatever term you'd like to call it. Now, Dodge uses PCM for its terminology. Now, this first one is the JTEC. It's identified by the 3 ports. Best of my knowledge, this was never used on the Hemis, so we're not going to deal with this at all. This is 2003 and prior. I'm just going to put it down here. Next is the NGC controller. This happens to be from a 2006. This style controller ran from approximately 2003 to 2012. In the trucks, it pretty much ran that whole gambit. In the cars, it kind of got introduced in 2005, and then I think around 2011 it went to the newer style, which we'll discuss in a minute. The other thing to point out about this is from 2003 to 2008, these were tuned to use a 32 tooth reluctor or tone wheel on your crank. So they will not interchange after 2008. And specifically, we'd like to stick with the 2005 to 2008. But a great source for all this is DIY Hemi. Go check those guys out. I'll put a link down below. We'll move on. This one's from 2010. Still an NGC controller, next generation controller. And this is tuned for 58 tooth reluctor or tone wheel. And there are some other wiring differences between these, but our main focus today is just to get these talking to our tuning program so that we can start tuning them. And I'm going to show you how to wire up the harness so you can do that. And the wiring for the 2006 will accomplish that task. We will have to modify it to run the 2009, but not to talk to the 2009 to 2012. Now let's go out, take a look at the other controller. Okay, so here we have the JPEC, or the Global Powertrain Engine Controller, which was introduced in 2008 in some vehicles, however none of the Hemi vehicles, and it started being used in some of the Hemi powered vehicles about 2011 and in the trucks around 2013. So that is the third type of controller we're going to see. There's actually 2 types. Let's talk about these PCMs for a minute, and the 2006 versus the 2010. I think I said a 2009 earlier, but they're the same. So in 2009, Dodge came out with the Eagle version of the Hemi engine, and it's the one that uses the 58 tooth reluctor ring, and these computers will not, the 2006 computer will not run that engine. So for anything 2008, well 2003 to 2008, this 2006 computer will work. For anything that 2009 to and up, this computer will work. Now there were some differences in 2013 where they switched over to the new computers, but you can still run those engines if you just change some sensors over. Now they did change the reluctor ring to a different 58 tooth reluctor, and I haven't tested whether this computer will run that engine or not, so I'll have to do that in the future. And the other thing I want to point out is we're dealing with the C1 connector, and we're wiring it up for a 2006, and it will talk to both these computers with what we're doing. However, there are some pins in here that if you're going to try to run an engine, you're going to do more than just talk to it. Then there's an extra power, and there's an extra ground, and then we have to discuss the starter. So I will discuss that in a future video. For now, we're just trying to get these to talk to each other. From the controllers, we're going to talk keys now. First one is this key right here. It's a black key. Looks like that. Pretty common key in the earlier vehicles. This key means that you have no security enabled on your PCM. So if you get the PCM of a vehicle that has a black key like this, that's your donor vehicle, then you don't have to worry about getting rid of the security on the PCM. The next one we're going to talk about is the gray key. Looks like that. It's got a little chip inside of it. Oh, let me flip the other side right there. You can see the chip. That key is coded to the SCIM module, Centric Key Immobilizer. Okay. How it works is this circles the ignition ring and the key goes in there and they read each other. Now, to the best of my knowledge, this works kind of like if you're familiar with it, your video game key fob, where it does a code generated number. So it's a rolling code. It's not a fixed code and it makes it a little harder to deal with. It's not like on the GMs. So it takes a little bit of effort to get around that. But as far as I know, on these earlier PCMs, NGCs anyways, up to 2015, you can tune that out. Next key is one of these. I have no idea to tell whether this has security enabled or not. So we're going to move on to the last style of key that you're going to come across, and that's the fob style right here. And it works with this WIN module. And again, I have no idea how to tell whether these are security coded or not until we get into the PCM. And I'm going to show you how to do that coming up. Well, let's talk about the part that scares most people off, the wiring. Now, we pulled this harness out of the 2006 that we were working on in the junkyard where this PCM came from. I'll put a link down below to that video so you can see where we got stuff from. And what you really need to worry about is on this end right here, and specifically the C1 connector or the black connector. And you can see that these are color coded to match. So you got a black, an orange, a green, and a white. So the black one, the C1 connector, has most of your power and grounds for powering up the PCM. And honestly, it's the only one we're going to worry about today for the most part. The next one is your orange connector. Now, just as a general rule of thumb, that's what we're talking about here. This goes to all your engine sensors, injectors, coils like that, stuff like that. Everything it takes to run the engine comes off of that connector. The next one is this white one, and it's separate, and there's a reason for that. It's because it deals with all the accessory stuff and communication with the body of the vehicle primarily. So it's not necessarily tied into the rest of the harness because it goes to a bunch of different places. It'll have stuff like the air conditioning, the throttle possibly on it, stuff like that. We'll look at that a little bit closer. And the last one is the green one. And depending on what you're doing over your swap, you can possibly ignore this one because this is the transmission. It controls the transmission primarily. And if you're going to an old transmission, then you don't even have to worry about this. If you're going to a standard transmission, pretty much don't have to worry about that. If you're running one of the modern transmissions, then we're going to hook it up and wire it up. Now, this big guy right here, that's the C130 connector. And that's where a lot of the wiring runs to. You can see I've already clipped a few of the wires, and they're the ones that came from the black connector, and I'll go through which ones those are. And we also have the data port reader, which that's a separate item. I've already kind of wired it up, and I'll get into discussing that too. And the very last thing is the grounds. That's the ring right here. So let's focus on this C1 connector and make it so you can talk to your PCM. Start programming it. Now, before we dive too much further into this, let's talk about some of the tools you may need while you're accomplishing this, and they're pretty basic for the most part. Number one, and most importantly, is a multimeter, and you're going to mostly need the ohm meter setting for this. It's a very handy tool. I'll put a link to where you can get these just on Amazon or whatnot. I'll put a couple of them in there just so you get an idea. It just take a look at the description below. I'll do that with everything here. Next is a soldering iron. So if you want to resolder your wires or connectors, very handy thing. And to go along with some of that, you're going to need your wire strippers. I just got a set like this. Very nice, very automatic. Just put the wire in there no matter what size and it peels it off. Some tape is very important, along with a marker. I like to label my wires as I trim them or cut them, and so I know what they're to. We'll go over that a little bit later. Some de-pinning tools, kind of look like this. Okay, there's a few different varieties, and some of them will work, some of them don't. Side cutters, of course, pick. I've made up my own jumper. These are very handy for when you're doing stuff like that. Just put a couple alligator clips on each end. Test light is invaluable. It's simple. It's great. It works once you have stuff powered up. It tells you a lot if you know how to use it. And then just a selection of various connectors and heat shrink, of course. So put that on the wire, heat it up, it shrinks down, protects your wire from the elements. Those are some of the basic tools. Also, because we are going to be doing some tuning, we have our laptop here, which I'll get into some detail on that in a little bit. And we have our tuning software. So let's get into talking about the wiring, and it's actually pretty easy. There's only like 5 or 6 wires that we have to deal with. It's not that bad, I promise you. Okay, let's have a closer look at the C1 connector. And one thing I'm going to point out right away is that these are numbered from the right to the left. So 1's over here and 10 is over there, type thing. And if you take a look at this guy, let's see, you can see the numbers on it right there. And that's on the back side of the connector. So when we're looking at the front side of the connector, that's how they're numbered. So let's start with the C1 connector, and I'm going to put a link to a very good website that'll help you out a lot, and that's Mopar Connector Repair Kits. And we're going to show you how to use that website. Get the website open. We're going to put in the year of the vehicle. And for this, it's a 2006. And pick the RAM pickup. Find now. And we're going to look for our C1 connector. Now, I'm just going to type in the search result. Module, Powertrain Control C1 NGC black 38-way. That's the one we're looking at right there. Now I will caution you that this site's not always accurate, but it's pretty good. So we're going to compare the 2006 and 2009, but right now we're going to focus on the 2006. And here's the important ones that we're going to be looking at. First pin, number 9, right here. That is a ground. So that's our first one. The second one we're going to look at, we're going to go down to pin 11 and 12. And those are here and here. These are your keyed ignitions. They need to have a 12-volt source put on them, switched preferably. So the next one we're going to look at, it's pin 18, which is right here. That's a ground that we're going to need. The next one, we're going to come down to pin 29. Yeah, that is the first one right here. That's your 12-volt power right there. The last two are pins 34 and 35. And these are going to be here and here. These are our communication ports. So they're the ones that are going to go to our data reader connector. That's what you're going to pull up on here, and you're going to have to pull that up. I'll pull that up right now to see how to wire that up. Data link connector is what it's called in here. And you can see that you got 2 grounds that you're going to have to hook up your CAN C plus, which will match up to your C1 connector. Your Canon C diagnostic minus also will match up to the C1 connector. And then we're going to have a positive power source. And once we have all that, we're good to go. So let's see if we can find that data link connector here. Right here. There you go. So there's the data link. And you can see this is our power on. So that's where our power is that pink wire right there, looking at the back side of it. So it's the bottom corner right there. Our grounds are the middle two up top here. And then our data ports on this particular connector, it doesn't matter which one you get. You'll have to look and see which one they are. But you've got your 2 ports. So one's up top, one's at the bottom. And then you can look at your wiring codes and it all corresponds. You see the white with the green and the white with the blue. Those are your data, the twisted wire pair. Okay, so those are the important connectors. We're gonna have to provide the power and the grounds, and then these 2 data wires that I showed you. And that's it. Once you've done that, you can talk to the 2006 computer and the 2009 computer. We're gonna show you that next. But one thing I do wanna show you is we wanna take our ohm meter and be able to read it. So we'll put a little pin in there, and I'll do the one. And I'll show you how to see to double check your circuits, because like I said, this site's not always 100% accurate. It's really good, but we're gonna ring that out and then figure out which wire goes where, and they'll go to the C130 connector or to our grounds. C1 pin 9 right there should be a ground. So just to confirm, we're gonna plug our ohm meter in, and we're gonna correct, and look at that, there you go. 0 resistance. Make sure you're on your ohm setting, and we got 0 resistance there. That means we've got the right pin. The other ground on this connector is right below that. I think that's C18. There we go, 0. So we've confirmed those are our grounds. That's it. It's that easy. I'm not kidding you. 11 and 12, these are our keyed sources, and they require 12 volts of power, but it should be a switched source. So you can turn it on and off. And that's what tells the PCM the key's turned on or the key's turned off, or it's in the run position or whichever position. Now they come right over to this guy right here, your C130 connector. And the nice thing is these have circuit numbers on them, so you can go to the circuit for this is F202. You can find it on both connectors. I'll show you that on the screen here. We're gonna put that right there. And there you have it. We found that connector. So that's one of the pins we'll need. Now we'll move to the other starting source, or the keyed switch. And that's the F1 circuit. There you go. There you go, we found that one. So we've got our keyed sources on those 2 pins. So we know where they are. And if we want to, we can depin the C130 and pull those wires out, or we can find the other half of this, plug it in, and use those wires. So the next thing we want to look at is we want to look at the fuse power, the hot bus power, and that is on pin 29 on the C1 connector, which is in the bottom row, the very first one right here. There it is. So we found that, and that's our hot bus that needs the power. That's what we need to have to power up the PCM. The other 2 connectors is this 34 and 35 pin on our C1 connector, and these are what's going to allow us to talk to the PCM through the OBD2 port, and they are pin 23 and 24 respectively on the C130 connector. Oh, there it is. All right. So yeah, we've kind of confirmed everything. So really, we're just looking at these 2 connectors, and we're looking at the grounds. That's it. We found everything we need to talk to the PCM. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to wire this all up so that we can actually talk to this thing. Let's get to that. Once we've identified our wires, I have just cut them. I find that's the easiest to do. If you have the other end and you want to use it, that's fine. If you want to depin it, also fine. I just trim them. I leave a little bit of tail in case I ever want to use this connector for something. And then I label them with, so you take a look there, I've got C1, pin 29, 12 volt. So I know what those are for. The OBD2 connectors, or the CAN bus connectors, are really easy to identify because they're a twisted wire pair. There's a white with a light blue stripe and white with a light green stripe. And that's going to wire into this. Now, there's going to be 4 wires connected on this. That'll be in these two, and it'll be a power and a ground. And then we'll be able to talk to our computer. And these 3 will get 12 volts. And then we'll hook up our ground ring right here. And the only thing that needs to get plugged in at that point is a black connector. So I've done what you really shouldn't do. I've put all my powers to one source. Now the 2 pink ones, they should be a switch. And all this should be fused, but it'll work for what I'm doing. And I'll go into more detailed wiring in a later video. We're just trying to get communications up. So let's start with our 2006 computer. You can see there. Came out of that truck. We're going to plug our connector into it. Here's the click, locked in. We'll hook our power up. We need our diagnostic port. Now make sure you get a well-charged battery when you're doing this, or a good power source, 12 volts. Put our ground on. Now the computer is powered up. We're going to confirm that in a minute here. Okay, I need my jumper because we have to power up our data link reader. Where's my data port? Right there. I'm just going to plug that in like that. And you can see it's showing that we've got power to the computer. As soon as I connect the power to here, we should get a whole bunch of lights flashing. There we go. Everything's connected. So come over to our laptop now. You can see that I've got, for now I'm just got the scanner open. We're going to look and see we've got, right now it says 5.7 liter V8 Durango 2004. We know that's not what this computer came out of. This computer came out of a 2006 Dodge Ram 1500. So we're going to come to our red circle here. We're going to try to connect to that. You can see it's gathering the info. And there we go. We look at the top, 2006 Dodge Ram 1500 5.7 liter V8. There you go. We're talking to the computer. That's exactly what we wanted. Now, let's go into the editing portion of things. Editor. We're going to connect using this read vehicle. Okay, sometimes this happens. I found that if this happens, I have to unplug the data port from the OBD2 reader, plug it back in, hit read again. There we go. And it's reading the system. Now to save time, we'll hit read. And it's got 4 minutes it's going to take. Okay, so we're done reading it now. And I've saved the file. I've called it 2006 Ram Hemi swap. We're going to open that up. We're going to want to take a look at a couple things here. Let's go to system first. And right here, this is your security. This is one of the things that I want to point out. So you can see it's disabled, but it is capable. So if that says it's disabled, then you should have no security on this system. The vehicle should start. You'll also see that the computer controls the alternator and the starter relay, and you can enable or disable this. We'll get into that a little bit. Now I'm not going to get too much technical into these settings. I just want to point this out. So we'll close that window. Let's go, we want to look at the engine. And under the fuel, we'll go lean fuel savings. And this is your MDS enable and disable. So you can set when it kicks in, when it kicks off, and you can disable it or enable it here. So those are just two quick things I want to show you. Now, let's get out of this and we'll power down. We'll connect to the 2009 computer. Just reduce that. We're going to bring up our editing tool again. Okay, so let's just unhook our grounds. Okay, our computer's disconnected. Now we got the 2009 computer. We're going to connect that. Click, there we go. We're going to reconnect our grounds. Okay, we seem to be talking. Again, we're going to hit our little connect. There you go. Oh, sorry, 2010 Dodge Ram pickup light duty. There you go. We're talking to that computer. So, that's it. That's all there is to it. It's just those few wires. And you can actually talk to the computers and start programming them. Now, I will do a second video where we go into a little more detail on how to clean up the wires, put in some relays, put in some fuses, switches, stuff like that. That little bit can get you up and running. And I do have that video, again, the link's down below in the description, of me getting that 2010 Eagle engine running on my homemade engine stand. So thanks for joining us. If you have some comments, you have some stuff you want to see, please, by all means, leave the comments down below. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. It's much appreciated, and hope that helped you out. Have a great day.